Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti. We'll read the topic Power of the Mind.
Power of the mind. Adi Shankaracharya, a renowned Indian poet-philosopher, captures the devastating effect of the mind's subjugation to the enchantment of the sense objects. In one of his verses, he describes how a moth is fascinated by the light of a candle. Its eyes are irresistibly drawn by the flame, only to embrace it and be destroyed. In the same verse, he gives the second example to show how a fish, with its weakness for the tongue, gobbles the angler's bait and is killed. The third is a deer's attraction for sound. Its ears follow the drum's beat and is shot down by the hunter. The fourth weakness is that of the skin, which an elephant displays during its mating period. In its craving for sensual enjoyment, it loses its sense of direction, only to be caught in the trapper's pit. The fifth refers to the nose, which is drawn to smell. The poet portrays a bee entering a particular flower whose petals close in and destroy it. The verse thus depicts how the weakness for one sense organ can drive a creature to its own destruction. In effect, the poet deplores the state of a human being whose mind is subjugated to all the five senses. You must start reflecting upon the intricacy of living in this sensual world with such inherent weakness. Ironically, human efforts are directed to render the world unduly attractive, while the young choose to lead a licentious life with the mind freely indulging in the senses. People are totally in the dark, indifferent to the dire consequences of such a licentious way of living. Besides dealing with the mind's infatuation to the senses, the intellect has also to battle with a variety of emotions which the mind hosts. These emotions, when not controlled and directed properly by a discerning intellect, could turn wild and destroy the person. The common emotions that a human being falls a prey are love, hatred, greed, anger, jealousy, envy, etc. Emotions of the mind run through your person like water in a river, while your intellect acts as its two banks. If the banks of a river are not firm, the water flowing will inundate and devastate the fields on either side. And when the banks are strong, the water flows properly to enrich the fields. So too, when your intellect is strong, the emotions of your mind would be controlled properly to enrich your life. But with a weak intellect, the flood of uncontrolled emotions could devastate your personality. You could draw a graph depicting the fall of the human personality to virtual insanity. When the intellect is weak and the mind overpowers it, the person would initially become emotional. And with further loss of intellect and the mind's domination, he would turn eccentric, next hysterical, and ultimately insane. The intellect, therefore, plays a vital role in human beings. This does not apply to other creatures since they are not provided with an intellect. An interesting observation in the world of beings is an apparent disparity in nature's treatment of humans vis-a-vis all other creatures.
The power of the mind is of two: the senses and emotions onto itself. The intellect would be able to understand it and guide it. That's what we are discussing. For which a very famous verse is quoted. Adi Shankaracharya writes a book called Viveka Chudamani. Chudamani means the jewel, the crest jewel. Viveka, discrimination. So Viveka Chudamani is the book that he was talking about how to discriminate rightly. It's a very small book, 555 verses only. We start reading that book, it will take 5 years to finish that book now. 555 verses. Viveka means discrimination, knowledge. Chudamani is the jewel. So discrimination is that jewel. So that's the book, Viveka Chudamani. In that book, verse number 76, he quotes. This is the verse. Verse number 76 of Viveka Chudamani. The same verse with the same example comes in Bhagavatam also. In the Bhagavata Purana also it comes. If it is in Viveka Chudamani, verse 76, it comes in Srimad Bhagavatam. Since we do not know how to read the Bhagavatam in Sanskrit, I am not giving the reference there. Or you can put it like that. 11.8.7-21 you can put. You will not know how to read it. This is the same verse that comes in Srimad Bhagavatam too. Anything that is repeated in one or two scriptures, we understand the importance of it. Because it is so important that it is repeated. What is it that is repeated? How the senses trap a person and how the mind traps. So the human being have two traps. One is the trap of the senses. Another is the trap of the mind. And intellect is needed to understand these two. Once you understand the trap, you will know what to do out of it. Only if you don't understand the trap, you come and ask what to do. I understand the trap, sir, now what to do? The very fact that you are asking what to do, you have not understood that it is a trap. I understood that it is a poison, sir, what to do? Will you ask that question? If you are asking, I understood it as a poison. If you understand it as a poison, what will you do? You will drop it. You will not come and ask, I understood it as a poison. I understood it as dangerous. What to do now? It means what? You have not understood. Therefore, Vedanta says, go back. You have not understood, go back. Go back into the study. Go back into the reflection. Why? Because any time in Vedanta, when you ask what to do now, it means you have not understood. Remember this. Whenever you ask what to do, you have not understood. A person of understanding will not ask what to do. Person of knowledge and understanding will not ask. And everybody keeps asking now what to do. I understood this, sir, what to do. Same lecture will be given with taking up another book, another quotation, another story. Why? Because it is not understood. What is it that is not understood? How the senses is a trap, and how the desire is a, how the mind emotions is the trap. And these two traps are promoted so indiscriminately. These two traps are promoted as though that is growth of life. As though this is the growth of life. This is the Holocaust. That is the Holocaust. That's where we read it in the middle of the book. He said, ironically, human efforts are directed to render the world unduly attractive. One side, lot of effort is made to make it attractive. You have to keep it attractive. Attractive for what? As it is a trap. As it is a trap. And you make it more and more attractive. And all the advancement of life is nothing but make the world more attractive. How to make everything attractive? Eight-year-old person also wants to look like a 20-year-old. No, for what? Why the 80-year-old can't be an 80-year-old? Why the 80-year-old wants to look like a 20-year-old? Trap. These things are all getting recorded now, isn't it? These things are getting recorded, and it is on the cloud. Yeah, it's on the cloud, and anybody hears all this, the speaker can be sued. The speaker not only can be sued, he can be punished also for uttering these kind of things. How dare you talk like that? What is your problem if the 80-year-old wants to look like a 20-year-old? What is your problem? How can you shame them like that? What is it called? They come up with new words also. Every day they come up with new body shaming. How can you do body shaming like this? How can you talk like this? Who are you to? I will say, I am not saying all this. These people sitting in front of me, they are instigating me to talk like this, so punish them also, I will say. Because I am saying this and they are laughing and listening and they are instigating. Ram Subramaniam, if you are listening to all this, you have to be ready for this also, because these are the things that should not be spoken. Why? Because everybody is doing that. Make the world more and more attractive. Make the world more and more attractive so that the mind can freely indulge. In what? In the senses and the emotions. How to educate a person? The Bhagavata Purana, Viveka Chudamani. Since Bhagavata Purana comes first, we say Shankaracharya is quoting from Bhagavata Purana. Because he's saying exactly the same thing, the same verse. So for at least Viveka Chudamani reference, verse number 76. He says, the deer, the elephant, the moth, the fish, the bee, these five dies through their own attachment to one sense. Through their own attachment to one sense, what then is there in store for human who's attached to all the five? Naraha pancha piranchitaha kim? That's what he asks in Viveka Chudamani. Naraha, a human being, kim, how can he escape what? Panchabihi ranchitaha. Panchabihi ranchitaha means weakness to all the five. So, first thing is what? The trap of the senses. The second thing is the mind, the emotions. We'll come to that later. First, we will see the First, we will see the trap of the senses. First, we will see that. Each and everything one organ is one source of bondage for one animal. So they have only one sense bondage. A human being has 5 senses, therefore he has 5 bondages. That's why it is that much difficult. In the case of other species, they have only one sense weakness and one bondage. In the case of a human being, it is 5 sense weaknesses and 5 bondages. So the human being has 5 weaknesses and all the 5 causes suffering. And why do we call that as bondage? Anything that causes you suffering is a bondage. Anything that causes you suffering, crying, worry, depression, suffering, sorrow, anxiety, anything that causes anything that causes all this is called bondage. Why it is called bondage? He will suffer, but he will not know what to do to get out. He will suffer, that person will continue to suffer, the person will understand the suffering, but will not know what to do to get out. And what to do to get out? Discipline, that's all. It's very easy to get out. What to do to get discipline to get out. But the mind doesn't like discipline. Therefore, what the human beings started doing, they started making the world unduly attractive. Open the eyes. You don't have to open the eyes at all. It's there already in the mind only. It is there. You don't have to open. And if you open your eyes, you are finished. Why these 5 are bondage? Because he says poison will kill you only when it is injected. That's what he says. 76 to 82 in 5-6 verses he talks about how the senses trap. In Viveka Chudamani he talks about verses 76 to 82. So many verses he talks about how the senses trap. Poison can kill you only when it is injected. Human senses, pathale porum, he says. You see, you fall. That's it. You don't have to do anything. Just the sight itself is enough for a human being to fall. That's why attempts are made to make everything attractive. If something has to be made attractive, all the senses has to be engaged. If all the senses are engaged, it gets more and more attractive. Correct? Remember the example that we keep giving again and again and again. What is the example? All the 5 senses have to participate. What? Food. The food has to look good. First, the food has to look good. Yeah. And then it has to smell good. And then when you touch it, it has to. But we are touching with a spoon, no sir. What is the problem? Yeah. The touch also has to be attended to. After catering to the 3 senses, it comes to the 4th, the tongue. It doesn't come to the tongue directly. It doesn't come in. If it is coming to the tongue only directly, there is no problem at all. But it doesn't come to the directly. It has to look good. It has to smell good. You have to feel good. And then you have to taste. So, what is the only one that is left? The ears are left. What to do? Background music. Yeah. Put one background music. Soft background. All the 5 senses has to be catered. And when all the 5 senses are catered, the human being says, wow, what a wonderful experience. Wow. Beautiful, sir. What a wonderful experience. What a wonderful experience. What a wonderful experience. And that wonderful experience is the trap. So what is the trap now? How do you create the trap? Make it wonderful. That's why Vedanta says anything wonderful, take one step back. Anything wonderful, take one step back. Don't fall for it. But the censor says, no. Make it trap. You don't understand. Desire is the trap for frustration. You understand that you will not desire. You are desiring because happiness is coming in that. What people don't understand, the desire is a trap for you desire something, after that you need not worry. Definitely you will suffer. Ramatirtha says, people cry because their desire are not entertained. You have to cry because you have entertained a desire. People are crying because their desires are not fulfilled. He said, you need not worry. Cry because you have entertained a desire. Why? Definitely you have to go through the process. What is the process? The process of frustration. It's a trap. Intellect knows how to guide it so that it doesn't turn into a trap. So the 5 sense organs are 5 chains of bondage. All other animal has one chain. Human being has 5 chains. That's why he says, in the direction of ponalum, vadikudu sir, he said, isn't it? In any direction we go, we are getting hit. In any direction we go, nothing is happening, nothing is working. Why? Because 5 chains of bondage. This is as far as the senses are concerned. What is it? The first, all the 5 animals. The first one, the deer. The deer. The sound. How the hunter catches the deer, they drum. When they drum, the deer is so attracted to the sound, it gets very close. And when it gets very close, it's caught. So it has the weakness. What is the weakness? One weakness for sound. You know how swiftly a deer can run, isn't it? How swiftly a deer can run. How swiftly a deer can jump. When the lion chases, when the leopard chases, when the tiger chases, you have seen how swiftly it runs, no? That strength of the deer becomes useless in front of the sound. It stands still, it freezes as though it is paralyzed. And what the hunter will do? Very easily he will come, catch the deer. Are you able to follow how one weakness paralyzes it? The second weakness is, he talks about an elephant. How the elephant is caught? The elephant is caught during the mating season. It has a weakness. The weakness for skin, the rub, the touch. What happens? A captive trained cow elephant will be kept. Looking at the trained captive cow elephant, the male comes running, not realizing there is a pit, and it falls in the pit. That's how the elephant is caught. Third, a moth. And this moth is the classic example which has inspired all the poets across generations, across countries, across cultures. This example of the moth. Attracted to the flame, it comes round and round and round and gets caught. Burns itself. As it is getting closer and closer, it can feel the heat. It's not that it doesn't, it's not that when it comes closer to the flame, it feels as though it is an ice cold. It feels the heat. It can feel it, and yet it cannot resist. And yet it cannot resist. Embraces the flame as it were only for self-destruction. This is the moth. The fourth one, the fish. How the fish is there? The bait. They put the bait. Yeah. What is the bait? Alfonso mangoes, Narayanji. The two box. Yeah, one partale so this thing. Box on the what do we do? Isn't it? The bait. The fish falls for it. It's caught. Not realizing that it's not the food. What appears as food is the bait. What appears as joy and happiness is the bait for your suffering. That is senses. Remember this. Are you able to understand the formula now? What appears as happiness is nothing but the bait for suffering. But the human being cannot see suffering. Why? Because it is clothed in that. It is clothed in that happiness, the joy. The fourth one. The fifth one is the bee. The fourth one is the bee. The flower, the smell of the flower is so attractive. It goes into it and trapped. It goes into the flower and it is trapped. Each animal brings about their own destruction because of one bondage. And that bondage is caused by what? Sound, touch, form, taste, smell. Put it in the sequence. One animal for one sense. Put it like that. But sir, these are all natural, no, sir. These are all natural instincts, no. As long as that instinct is guided by the intellect, only if it is guided by the intellect, you can call it as a natural instinct. If it is not guided by the intellect, you should not call it as a natural instinct. It is your weakness. This is knowledge. Again, I repeat. Sir, but these are all natural instincts, no? Yeah. Wanting to hear a nice music, not drilling, not the drilling noise, wanting to taste the food wanting to taste the good food, wanting to see a good sight. All these are natural, no, sir. Natural instincts, no. You cannot call them as natural instinct unless it is guided by the intellect. Here we are talking, since it is not guided by the intellect, it is self-destruction. It's a trap for weakness. It's a trap for, it's a trap for destruction. It's a trap for weakness. It's a trap for destruction. Not understanding this, what people do? What people do? They excessively promote that which gives, excessively promote that which is destructive. They excessively promote it. Sense objects are detrimental, he says. Dosha it is. Once intellect is grown, the sense organs doesn't become a weaknesses. The sense organs makes your life blissful and happy. Once you have a powerful intellect. Once the intellect comes, all this is happens. If the intellect is not there, what will happen? The sense organs cannot do damage if the intellect is there. If the intellect isn't there, sense organs destroys. It means by itself they don't destroy. Only if the instrument of intellect is not, if the instrument intellect, if it is not there, then only it destroys. The biggest problem that people have is this. All this is natural, no? Is it wrong? Is it wrong? Is it wrong? Is it wrong? The mind will ask a question, is it wrong? Only to get an answer that it is not wrong. Yeah. When you are asking a question, is it wrong? What is the answer that you are wanting? Somebody to say, it is not wrong. Therefore, you can go back and, therefore, everybody can go back and indulge. And who all will say it is not wrong? Who all will say that it is not wrong? The first wonderful people who will say that it is not wrong is the father and mother. The first people to promote it is the father. As it is, they are born with it, they are suffering with it. And who is the first one to promote it? Father and mother. Grandfather and grandmother need not talk about it at all. Grandfather and grandmother, that's it. Nothing to talk after that. Why? Like it? No, take it. Like it? Take it. Don't like it? Leave it. Even when they go on a holiday, they will, the host has to be told what they like and what they don't like. No. Why? Because not even once they should not get, not even one time they should not get what they don't like, and continuously they have to be given what they like. But this is affection, sir. This is affection. This is what we call as love. So first destruction. As it is, you are born with the weaknesses, and the environment also promotes it. And who are the first people to promote it? The parents. Why they promote it? They themselves don't have an intellect. No, what will they do? That's why they always say, oh, I didn't get it, sir. At least let them have it. No. I didn't get it. At least let them have. No. I didn't get it. At least let them have. No. Why? You wanted it, for whatever reasons you couldn't get it. The moment you get it, it means what? The formula for discipline is what? When you can afford, you should not be disciplined, as the formula for indulgence. When you can afford, you should not be disciplined. When you can't afford, be disciplined. Shankar, Purida. The formula. This is how parents destroy. This is how parents destroy. First destruction comes from the parents. The second destruction comes from hierarchy. Yeah, everybody contributes. Everybody contributes. Second, friends. You know, you'll make friends only those who have a common like. Do you ever observe it? Nangal or gang sir, what does it mean? Everybody in that gang will like the same thing and they will dislike the same thing. Then only you can be a gang. What is the gang? Gang. Friends. Then comes, don't worry, then comes other things and all. And finally comes the icing on the cake, the crowning jewel. The crowning jewel in the form of a partner. The crowning jewel in the form of the partner. And then Shankaracharya says, don't worry. Don't worry. Next Janma, another time we will see. Because after that, no chance for them to. So it is not, the problem is not that it is natural. It's not natural. Only if it is guided, it is natural. If it is unguided, it is destructive. Only when the senses are guided, it is natural. When they are not guided, it is destructive. Guiding means discipline. Guiding means discipline. Nowadays, we don't use the word discipline. We have to say guide. Shastras doesn't use the word guide, discipline and all. Shastras use a beautiful word. The beautiful word that the Shastra uses is tapas. Beautiful word, tapas. Tapaha and the word tapas. Tapaha means one who is. So all these words were in the vocabulary at one point of time. Nowadays, it's not there at all in the vocabulary anymore. All the wonderful words is lost and all the bad words have become part of the vocabulary. But this is growth and advancement. What do we do? Yeah, this is what is growth is all about. So the tapaha is the destruction and tapas is the way to tapaha. Tapas is the way to bring the control back, make it natural. Tapobi China Papa Nam Shanta Nam Vitaragina Mumukshu Nam Apekshoyam Atma Bodho Vidiyate. In the book, Yarukku Puriyum. He's saying, who will understand this? Everybody can hear it. Everybody can appreciate it. Only one understands this. Lot of people will hear it. Lot of people will appreciate it. Lot of people will say, wonderful book, but only one understands. Now the question Atma Bodha he addresses is, who will understand this? Not the one who hears and appreciates it. The one can hear, one can appreciate and still not understand. Who can understand is Tapo Bihi. One who is able to do tapas. Tapo Bihi, Kshinapa, all that. We are not going into the verse now. I'm not going to Atma Bodha first verse. It is so difficult to drop because it is invisible. The bondage is invisible. That is why intellect is to see the invisible in the visible. Remember the definition we give? Intellect means the capacity to see the invisible in the visible. It's not to see the invisible Brahman in the world. That intellect can never do. Invisible in the visible means it's not the invisible Brahman that can be seen. The bondage that is invisible in all this, intellect sees it. So the invisible thing that is causing bondage becomes visible. And not ordinary bondage. Not ordinary bondage. If it is an ordinary bondage, you know it. What is sense weakness? Sense weakness is nothing but body oriented. Sense weakness means body oriented. That's all. Physical, everything will be physical. That is sense weakness. Then comes emotional weakness, which we are going to see later. Where he spoke about the chart and all that. Controlling the senses means controlling the body, because body is made up of the 5 senses. So, weakness of the senses means a person has turned physical. Sense weakness means physical. And, and everything in that person will be physical. Everything associated with that person will be physical after that. Intellect understands this. Intellect understands. What is the understanding? Senses are powerful. But sir, senses are powerful only for children and teenage, no? For grown-ups and all, we don't have to worry about the sense weakness and all, sir. For we all have to worry about emotional weaknesses only. Why? Senses are, because of excessive indulgence, the senses are dead, that's all. Not that a person has transcended it. The senses have become numb, the senses are dead. Where that person is not knowing the distinction between the two types of food. The senses have become numb. Numbness doesn't mean you have gathered strength. Remember that. If you become numb, doesn't mean you have gathered strength. Sensitive foot means what? If the feet is sensitive, what is sensitive feet means? You walk on the cleaned, mopped room, and if you can feel the fine dust, your feet is alive, sensitive. Correct? There are people who walk on the thorns and they don't feel it at all. Are they strong? Is the feet strong? Will you say that? No. 1 inch of thick dead skin made the feet so numb that they don't even feel it. Which people misunderstand it as strength. Vedanta says that is not strength, that is just becoming numb. Numb spots. It's called numb spots. People develop a few numb spots so that they don't feel the pain. Vedanta comes and says that is not mastery, that is not strength, that is another kind of weakness only. Therefore, human beings must understand senses are powerful. Senses are powerful. And nobody wants to hear the sense weakness story because it looks like, sir, இதெல்லாம் எங்களுக்கு சிலபஸ், இதெல்லாம் டீனேஜ்ல போய் சொல்லி கொடுக்கணும் சார். Talk all this to school children, teenagers, they only need all this. What we need, Vijay, what we need only Mandukya and Brihadaraneka only we need, sir. We don't need all this senses story and all. We don't sense control story and all. We don't need, because that is meant for children, not for us. In the eyes of the Shastra, whoever doesn't have an intellect, howsoever old you are a child. In the eyes of the Shastra, howsoever, if you don't have an intellect, you will be seen as a child. Dumb, foolish, ignorant child. But I have a degree. The best university in the country and the best university in the world I have studied. Very good. You will be called as, last week we defined them. They will be called as, what will they be called as? According to the Shastra, not according to me. According to the Shastra, if they don't have an intellect and if you have all that, what will be called as? Intelligent. First adu solum. Intelligent. First intelligent adu solum. Intelligent. Followed by illiterate. Followed by agitated. Followed by depressed. Intelligent, illiterate, agitated, depressed. Why? The starting point. What is the starting point? Senses under control. So here he's saying the verse depicts how the weakness for one can cause destruction. A human being who has weaknesses for all the five, what is his chance? A human being who has weaknesses for all the five, what is his chance? No chance at all. And yet, what does everybody do? Human efforts are directed to make it more and more attractive. Easy, attractive. Attractive means what? Easily available. Attractive means it has to be easily available. People are totally in the dark, indifferent to the dire consequences of such a growth. What they call as growth, they are not understanding. Indiscriminately promoting this in the name of growth. First battle the intellect has to fight is what? The senses. That is the first battle. With the senses, it has to fight. That's one sense. How many sense? 5 sense. And how the bondage is invisible. Why do we say the bondage is invisible? Because you are experiencing a joy, no? Are you able to follow? See, when you are experiencing a joy and happiness, how can you understand the bondage in it? How can you understand the bondage in it? Because there is a pleasantness. There is a joy in it. When there is a joy and pleasantness, bondage is invisible. Bondage is invisible. And what is intellect? The capacity to see the visible in the invisible. What is visible? Pleasure and happiness is visible. What is invisible? The bondage. It's not right to say. The bondage is in the instant pleasure seeking. Remember that. There you qualify it further and make it clear. It is not just the pleasure the bondage is. The bondage is seeking the pleasure that wants, that has to happen. That has to happen now. Everything has to happen now, immediately, isn't it? Everything should happen now it should happen. Now it should happen. And all the human efforts are directed how to make it happen now. How to make it happen now, isn't it? Can't wait for 5 minutes for the AC to come and cool, no? Can't, that 5 minutes itself is too much. That's why you need to have an app. And what the app will do? Office in the Kalamode, you can switch on the AC, isn't it? Then as you come home, you walk into the cool house. When we can afford, what is the problem? That is why in those days, they never made affordability part of life. Today, we are making a blunder. Intellect, if intellect is available, it will not make so many things available. Intellect is not there. That's why so many things are made available. Intellect is not there. How many parents understand what they are giving to the child? The child is matured enough to handle. Can they handle it? Do they know what it is? Can they handle it? How many parents are thinking? Where is the intellect? Afford, where? If they are not giving means they can't afford. When they can afford, simply give. Why? Because no function of the intellect at all. People are totally in the dark, indifference to the dire consequences of such a way of living. Discipline is associated with poverty. Discipline is seen as inferior. Discipline is associated with something, poverty. Indulgences is associated with richness. Indulgences is associated with richness, and discipline is associated with poor intellect. This is. The poor person, sir, how can they understand intellect and Vedanta and all, Dharma and all? How can a poor person follow Dharma, sir? Means poverty is a licentiousness to become adharmika. Where is the intellect? Are you able to follow? And we also sympathize with that group, no? We also sympathize with them and say, it is correct. Isn't it? We also sympathize. Say, pavam, sir. என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க? சாப்பாட்டுக்கே கஷ்டப்பட்டா அப்புறம் எப்படி சார் வேதாந்தம் வரும்? You follow? சாப்பாட்டுக்கே கஷ்டப்படுறவங்க how can they understand Vedanta? ஓகே, சாப்பாடு நல்லா இருக்கிறவங்க தூங்கினே இருக்கிறாங்க இல்லையா? சாப்பாடு கஷ்டப்படுறவங்க they don't want Vedanta. சாப்பாடு நிறைய இருக்கிறவங்க gets into a coma. Then who will understand this knowledge? எனக்கு முன்னாடி இருக்கிற ஸ்கிரீன், there is one screen in here, there is one screen here, there is one book here. All the inanimate things are listening to Vedanta. No animate being is available to listen. All the inanimate things are listening. Enna pandrathu? Intellect doesn't understand. Are you able to follow? So people believe discipline and all is discipline is not seen as a virtue anymore. Discipline is seen as a weakness. Who will follow discipline? Who will follow? I don't know who will follow. Or very simple, sir. Everybody other than me. Very simple, isn't it? Who should follow discipline? Very clear, sir. Is there any doubt why everybody other than me? Isn't it? Road rules, nobody is following, sir. Why no? If everybody follows, my violation becomes not seen. You follow? Therefore, first thing is to understand senses. Here he talks about the senses. How the weaknesses for one can drive a creature to destruction. Puranic stories talk about wise, extraordinary men displaying a weakness. Puranic stories talks about extraordinary men depicting weakness, and they suffer and they go through a pain and suffering. We have seen that examples, no? We have seen. Vishwamitra falls for Menaka. That's the story. Vishwamitra fell for Menaka. You know, from the dust of his body, he created another damsel. Does anybody know the name of the damsel that Vishwamitra created? It's called Tilottama. From the dust of his body, he created one damsel. And she is the most beautiful than Ramba, Urvashi, Menaka. All of them is insignificant compared to her beauty. And such a man, such a capacity fell for Menaka. Fell for Menaka. How can that man fall? He cannot fall. And yet, these great men allow themselves to be depicted as having weaknesses for the sake of educating us. Why? Because we don't understand the weaknesses. We don't understand the. This is as far as the senses are concerned. First thing, the intellect is battling for the senses. Now comes the mind. Vada. Now only you have come to our problems. Now only you have come to our problem. Mind you have come. Senses problem and all is for the grandchildren. You teach kindergarten kids. Now you have come to my problem. What is the problem? Mind. Besides dealing with the mind's infatuation to senses, the intellect also has to battle. I'm reading from the book. Besides dealing with the mind's infatuations to the senses, the intellect has also to battle with the variety of emotions which the mind hosts. When these emotions are not guided, it will turn wild and destroy. It will turn wild and destroy. Now we are coming to the mind. Everybody says this, isn't it? The root problems of all problem is mind, sir. The root problem of all problems is mind. If mind is that problem, you should get rid of it. No, straight away amputate it. No, you are free. Correct? If mind is the root of the problem, what you should do to the mind? You should, why not get rid of the mind? Why not amputate the mind? You cannot get rid of it. You cannot amputate it, for that is not the problem. Unguided mind is the problem. Mind is not the problem. Just as the senses are not the problem, the unguided senses is the problem. Similarly, the mind is not the problem, the unguided mind is the problem. If the senses and the mind is guided, you have learned self-management. If the senses and the mind is not guided, you are managed by them. You are not managing you. They manage you. Manage you means they decide what you have to do. You don't decide. And the only way, what happens, a very strange thing that people do in order to become happy. You know what is a very strange thing that people do in order to become happy? Everyone knows only one way to be happy, peaceful, celebration, everything. There's only one way. What? Become unconscious. Get drugged and become unconscious. That is the only way that people know to be. All happiness is self-forgetting. Anything that helps you to forget yourself for a while, you will think that is happiness. Movie. What is happening in a movie? You can't even stand up against one person at your home. And if you see the movie, what? One fellow hitting, thousands of arrows will be shot. Arrow shooting is understandable. Thousands of bullets will be shot towards you. And that fellow will run into the bullets. And not a scratch. Wow. Yeah. Why? That is making you to forget you. That is making you to forget something of you. Are you able to follow? Ram Subramanian. Nothing. There, the man is walking into the bullets and can speak a lengthy dialogue for 5 minutes also after that. Yeah. And not a scratch. Wow. Yeah. I like only that. I watch that a lot. Aditya channel, I'm bored. Yes, some fellow bullets are. He's not running away from the bullets, no. He will run into the bullet. And still not a scratch. Imagine he runs into the bullet and getting shot and dead. First scene, what will happen? What will happen there? That is the number story. That is not attractive. Yeah, he's depicting what we are. We don't want to know what we are. We want to forget this and live in some fantasy. Anything that promotes fantasy is what is happiness nowadays. So all that we are craving is for what? That which will help us to fantasize. That's why this drugs and all is so attractive. Why? Because straight away it helps in that fantasy. Movie, gossip, anything that you take is for what? For this mind, the host of emotions is so much of a problematic thing. We want something to, we want to move away from it for a while. And what do? There are so many methods. Everybody find their own method. But there is a strange law that connects everything. Everybody will do it in one way. But there is a common thing. What is the common thing? Self-forgetting should happen. And if someone has forgotten oneself so completely, you should worship that man. No. We are all attempting for self-forgetting. And supposing a person reaches the state of self-forgetting completely, we call that person insane and put him behind, we treat him, isn't it? Are you able to follow? A person has become self-forgetting. What is self? That person has become insane. What is insanity? What is insanity? He need not worry, isn't it? He need not worry about anything. If you have a pet, a dog at home, you cannot tell the dog what? 7:45 to 9 o'clock. Where are we? What day is today? Saturday. Saturday, 7:45 to 9 o'clock, silent mode. You should not bark. Can you tell this to the dog? No. Whether the dog doesn't know whether it is an appropriate situation to bark or inappropriate situation to bark, it will bark. That's all. It will not know whether it is an appropriate place to relieve itself. It will not know. Wherever it is, it will relieve. We only has to go for a specific place. No. Why? Because we are all supposed to be sane. Even the basic instincts we train, and one training order we stop. What is that? Only one training that every parent will do to the children. What is the training? 20, 30 years, 40 years back, we had children at home. We have forgotten all that. The only training, and it stops there. What is it? Bathroom training. Adukku mela indulgences only. Why? Because it is becoming too much of a nuisance to handle. That's all. In the case of an animal, it is there is no appropriate or inappropriate. Are you able to follow? In the case of an animal, there is no appropriate situation, there is no inappropriate situation. It just does what it has to do at that moment. Insane person also will do that. Are you able to follow? Insane person also will do that. Animals also will do that. And a human being who is supposed to have an intellect should act according to the appropriateness and inappropriateness. If I feel like yawning in the class, if you feel like yawning in the class, it is inappropriate to yawn. At the same time, you can't control also what to do. ஒரு 2 நிமிஷம் கேமராவை switch off பண்ணி வச்சிரலாம். Switch off the camera for 2 minutes and then come back. Why? Because something inappropriate that should not come on is happening. Intellect is functioning, correct? Are you able to follow? Something inappropriate is happening. It should not be there. Therefore, there is a controlling factor that is called intellect. Emotions do not understand the appropriate, inappropriate and all. Emotions don't understand what is appropriate, what is inappropriate. It will just, that's why it's called impulsive. The Vega. The Bhagavad Gita, the beautiful word that he uses is the Vega. So the mind is not the problem. The unguided mind is the problem. The senses are not the problem. The unguided senses is the problem. This understanding and guidance can be done only by the intellect. This knowledge is what the world is lacking. And to the society that is lacking the knowledge of intellect, what can you talk about moksha, liberation, karma, bhakti, jnanam and all? You can talk, but it is of no use. You can talk. It's not that people are not talking. We are also talking, no. Yeah. Thesis on God, as though we are all there. As though we are all mumukshus, we study thesis on God also, isn't it? That's why we, from that height of floating, we brought it down to the Holocaust of attachment. And Holocaust of attachment will become so painful, class numbers alone will start dwindling after a while. Yeah. After a few weeks later, Venkat will send a message. Sir, do we have to have the session today? In class, sir, he will ask. I'll ask why. Nobody is coming today. Change the book. Yeah. Change the book. Everybody will start. Everybody will start. What is changing the book? Mundaka Upanishad we are doing. Put it. Very good. Great. Everybody will start. Everybody will start coming again. What are you going to do? Useless thing is happening. Shankar, correct? He's saying yes also. No, sir, he's saying yes and he's nodding the head. No, sir, you are wrong. Yeah, yes, sir. I'm saying useless and he's saying yes. Anyway, he's the best student. Yeah, he's one of the best. Mind is not the problem. The mind that is not guided is the problem. The senses is not the problem. The senses that is not guided is the problem. Here comes the crux. What is the crux? The senses cannot guide itself. The mind cannot guide itself. If the senses can guide itself and if the mind can guide itself, there is a built-in mechanism of control. Intellect becomes redundant there. Are you able to follow now? The senses cannot guide itself. The mind cannot guide itself. If the mind can guide itself and if the senses can guide itself, there is a built-in mechanism. What is the built-in mechanism? They know how to get. Then the intellect becomes a redundant entity. The intellect becomes a redundant entity here. But what we understand here, the senses cannot guide itself. The mind cannot guide itself. Therefore, the Holocaust is not at all understood. Therefore, the Holocaust is not at all understood. What is the Holocaust? The weaknesses is the Holocaust. And everybody has a reasoning for their weakness. Remember this, huh? Remember this law. Poor thinking is this, the law of poor thinking. You make a mistake, and the reasons you give to justify your mistakes turns out to be a bigger mistake. Again, I repeat. You make a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake. You make a mistake. After making the mistake, the reasons that are given to justify the mistake turns out to be a bigger mistake. Thus, the vicious circle of mistakes happen. Thus, the vicious circle of mistakes trap. They create their own trap. They create their own trap. You create your own trap and you fall, and then you ask somebody to lift you up, and when somebody lifts you up, you create another trap and you fall, and then somebody lifts you up, and by the time you know how to what you would have learned by now, help-proof you become. Because you have become a master in creating traps and falling, nobody can help you after that. Why? Because we keep doing this. We make a mistake, and the reasons that is given to justify the mistake. And what are the reasons that is given to justify the mistake? Is it wrong to eat mango in mango season, sir? Is it wrong to do that? Is it wrong to do that? The very fact that you are asking, is it wrong to do that, means what are you asking for confirmation? What is the confirmation you are asking? You know it is wrong. Your intellect is telling you it is wrong, and you want somebody to tell you that it is right. Are you able to follow? First mistake in reasoning. Like this, we will do 1-1 class, 1-1, I will say randomly. Make a note of all this, and if you can sequentialize it, you will understand what it is. And it's not that difficult at all. Is it wrong, sir? The question that you are asking it as wrong itself, you know the difference between what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. That's why you are asking this question, no? Will a dog ever ask the question, what is the right time to bark? Is it wrong to bark now? Will a dog ask this question? The very question that you are asking it as wrong means you know that it is inappropriate. You know that it is not the right thing. And yet you ask this question, and somebody will come and give an answer. What? Somebody will come and somebody will be there to give an answer. What is that answer? No, it is not wrong. Abba, this one person understands me, sir. This is understanding. One person understands. Who's that one person who understands me? I say, is it wrong? And the person says, no, it is not wrong. Sir, I feel jealousy. Is it wrong? I feel jealous. Is it wrong? The fact that you are asking the question, is it wrong? Your intellect is saying, it's wrong. It is wrong. That's why you are asking this. But still the power of the emotion is so strong that you will go and ask, you will know who that person is, and you will go and ask that person only. Second mistake. Second mistake is, you know who will agree with you, and you will associate with that person only. Second thing, reasoning. We are explaining how we have gotten into this Holocaust. Second, what is the second thing? I have given this example in some other context. In the flow, I am saying this now. So this is the flow. When one child has a problem, where it will go for guidance? When one child has a problem, to whom it will go for guidance? Friend. And that friend is another child. Correct? That's why they'll come and say, I discussed it with my friends. You feel like giving one slap to your child and 2 slaps to the friend who guided that child, no? Why? Because when you have a problem, it's very interesting. Such an how the combination is so deadly and why this intellect knowledge is very important. Why this knowledge is so important. I discussed it with my friends. And who are the friends? Who are also doing the same thing. Yeah, what are they? They are also doing the same thing. So what will they say? All these old people at home, all the dead fellows don't have nothing. They will talk like this only. Why listen? Why keep listening to them? Yeah. Better to get rid of them. If we can't get rid of them, find out the time they sleep and enter the house. Find out the time they wake up and leave the house. Why? Because association is the problem. No. Don't worry. No parent also knows what is right. So ultimately it doesn't make any difference. Ultimately it's not making any difference. The Holocaust. Invisible in the visible. The reasoning that you are giving is that which is turning into a I am weak and tired, sir. Since I am very weak and tired, is it wrong to have a drink? Coffee. Yeah, not coffee, tea. Yeah. Is it wrong? Yeah, buttermilk. Is it wrong to have a drink? And sir, it is legal also. It is not illegal. We are not doing anything illegal. It is perfectly legal also. Look at the reasoning. Huh? I used to think like this. Supposing if the government makes drugs, ganja legal, will I buy half a kilo and come and give it to my child because it is legal? Will anybody do that? Will you do that? You will not know. Holocaust of attachment, you are doing that. Because of not having an intellect, you are doing that. You are doing it to yourself and you are doing it to another because you have reasons to justify that. You have enough reasons to justify that. You make a mistake and the reasons you give to justify your mistake turns out to be a bigger mistake. What to do now? What to do now? Intellect says, are you prepared to discipline? Are you prepared to discipline? Yes, sir. I'm prepared. That's why I'm telling everybody, get disciplined, get disciplined. Nobody is disciplined. That's why I'm giving a lectures to everybody on discipline. Vedanta says, Yadyata charati sreshtah tat eva idarjanah sayat pramanam kurute lokaha tat anuvartate. They will follow what? Discipline. Self-discipline. Wanting others to become disciplined. Intellect says, self-discipline. And that self-discipline means the senses are guided, the emotions are guided. It means it's not a weakness anymore. It means it's not a weakness anymore. We spoke about the senses. We got into the mind. Next week we will do the chart. Next week we will do the chart of sanity to insanity. That's the chart he is referring in the book. The diagram is there. We will display the chart also next class, and we will do the chart and see where do we stand. Why are you continuing it into the next week also, sir? What to do? Two important points he said. Viveka Chudamani works in terms of the senses and in terms of the weaknesses of the mind. So we'll continue with the chart study next week. For today, what is the Holocaust? The senses are not a problem. The mind is not the problem. Why? If senses are the problem, get rid of the senses. If eyes is the problem, pluck the eyes. No. Problem gets sorted out, isn't it? You can pluck your eyes out, but that doesn't mean it is discipline directed. It means what? By themselves, they are not a problem. They ought to be guided. Why they ought to be guided? They cannot do it by themselves. Senses. Same rule. Mind. Then comes the mind. What is the mind? Emotions, blah, 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 etc. Whatever be that mind is. And they cannot handle it by themselves. Therefore, they also need to be guided. And one instrument, intellect, can guide both. That's why it is the supreme most. One instrument, buddhi, the intellect, has the strength and capacity to guide both. Guide means discipline both. And what is discipline? You know what is appropriate, what is inappropriate. Where it is appropriate, you do. Where it is not appropriate, where it is inappropriate, you will not do. Correct? Human being alone understands this distinction. No other species know this. That's why I gave this example. What is the appropriate time to bark? What is the inappropriate time to bark? Dog doesn't have this dilemma at all. You cannot tell the dog, Vedanta class is happening, be quiet. It will say yes by barking, isn't it? Well, how can it say yes? It will say yes only by barking. But the human being guidance means what? Appropriate and inappropriate. If it has to be done, you die, but you will do. If it should not be done, you will die, but you will not do. This is intellect. This is what intellect is. If it is appropriate, if it has to be done, you will die doing it. If it should not be done, you will not do it even if you die. It means your senses and mind is well disciplined, well controlled, well guided, well trained. That training is necessary to understand Brahman and all. That training is important to understand Mithya. That training is important to understand Maya. That training is important to understand Brahman. We see what is Brahman and we see how to train ourselves to get there. We see what is Brahman and we see ourselves how to train there. In this Holocaust of attachment, we will not talk about Brahman at all. We will be talking only about training. And although it will not be that interesting as thesis on God. With this, we conclude for today and we continue next week with the chart. Thank you.
One question posted by Mala.
Next week.